things that I've heard before many times is if you can think of anything else besides church planting, do that. And it's a bit reductionistic, but the point is they say if you can do anything else, if you can envision in your mind, if you can envision anything else that you would rather do in your life, then you should do that, because this is way too hard.
It would have been June 5th, 2005, I believe. And on Tuesday, I began working at the Cherry Street Artisan, which is a coffee house that used to be downtown. And I wish it were still downtown, because it was a great place. But there I met a guy named Luke. But God really used that time in me to grow me, but also to begin to grow the church as we began meeting people that would become a part of the core group of Karis. And Luke was kind of the start of that, although it took several months to persuade him that I wasn't some sort of wacko.
I would say that what brought Ann and I to Karis years ago was the same thing that we really treasure now as we look back on our time there. And I could describe it just as saying that it was a commitment to living out the identity of the church, to being a community called by God and empowered by God's grace to deal with the mess of being that community. In our time at Karis, we drew so close to just people who had different backgrounds from us, who had different interests from us, yet we truly felt like a family and felt this commitment to one another. And I don't feel like we've experienced anything quite to that degree of that sense of commitment and a sense of shared purpose and identity and mission in the way that we did in our time at Karis. We had tons of shared joys. We had nights of worship practice at the Weavers that were ridiculous and silly, and late nights at the Larsons when they were trying just to kick us out of their house because we wouldn't leave. But we had hard times too. We had hard conversations. We had conflict. We had disagreements, difficult moments. Yet through all that, we felt this deep bond and this deep commitment to each other. And I would say that the community that God created there was truly transformational to those who were in it, and that started with the vision that He put on Kevin and Amy's heart, from the beginning, that they wanted to see that kind of a community come to fruition in Columbia. I don't even know if Ann and I would have gotten married if it weren't for Kevin and Amy stepping into our mess and walking with us early on, even before we were part of the church plant in those early days. And then, they were with us through that, and the growing community that followed was with us through so many different, just important moments of our life and our early marriage. Even since then, at times when we've struggled to find community, we look back at our time at Karis, and it's kind of a reminder that kind of rich gospel community is possible, and it's an encouragement for us to keep striving for it, even when it seems hard to find. So Ann and I pray that God will grant 10 more years and beyond to Karis for creating that kind of rich community in Columbia.
Rob and I ended up meeting on campus one day when I was setting up there for one of their activities marts, and he still kind of makes fun of that table where I just had a few books sitting out and kind of a makeshift banner and a few flyers. But he and I got to know each other. I honestly thought I would never see him again, and I think he thought the same thing too, but he ended up showing up for these Bible studies we were having in our home.
Yeah, my story in coming to Karis is unremarkable in that it's a common story. It's how everybody comes to Karis. Somebody had a conversation with them. Somebody invited them. It was my second or third day in Columbia, and I had just moved to town. It was my first week of grad school, and there was an activities fair, which is every extracurricular organization on campus would gather around Lowry Mall in the middle of the university campus. And it was just an opportunity for students like myself to learn about what was out there in our community. And as I was walking down, most of you have heard this, I feel like many people have heard this story before. Kevin Larson was sitting there at a table, and he was looking for the first to be people who would make up a small group that would come to make up Karis Church.
And at that time, of course, too, I should say that we were actually called Karis Church of Columbia. That's because I wanted the grace of the gospel to be a part of the vision from the beginning. But it didn't take us too long to realize that that was a name that got us confused with some other places in town. And I have a friend in town who suggested I talk to the Tiger Hotel when I told him that we were looking for a place to meet. And I talked to them, and they said sure. And so we began, about 10 years ago, meeting on Sundays in the ballroom of the Tiger Hotel.
So we moved into the Tiger Hotel April 2006, and that was, it almost felt like when you get married and you get your first house, you're like, wow, this is real. We're not engaged anymore. We're actually married. We're actually doing this. This idea of being a church is not just something in theory that we're studying. We were going through New Testament book after New Testament book talking about church. In some ways talking about it in present terms, but in other ways we talked about it like in future terms, like this is what we're going to be. And maybe that was silly to think about being a church in a future sense, but we weren't in a building and we didn't have many people, and we just assumed that if we keep reaching people that we will become what we see in the New Testament. And so I think that's why we talked about it in the future tense. The single biggest trial was that there was so much work involved in putting the gathering together. I mean, I think most people, when they think of church, you have some people whose experience is they walk in and it's there. I mean, you have seats and speaker and preacher and coffee, and they walk in, they sit down, they enjoy their experience, and they don't think about the fact that, air conditioning is running at a proper temperature, and coffee was made, and those speakers took months to order and install by volunteers who work full-time jobs elsewhere. Like, I don't think a lot of people think about that. But then you have the second experience, and those are the people who are getting there at 6 o'clock in the morning, who are making the coffee, and who are sound checking with the band, who are praying over the text as they prepare to preach it. But then there's a whole third experience, and this is what was the experience for everybody. If you were a part of Karis for the first 8 years, you had one option for what kind of experience you were going to have on Sunday mornings, and that was everybody serves every week. The question wasn't, do you like to serve? The question wasn't, what's your favorite Sunday to serve? The question wasn't, which team would you like to serve on? We didn't have teams. Everybody did everything. Literally, you come in on Sunday morning and nobody had the experience where you just come in and sit down. That wasn't anybody's experience. Nobody had the experience of you come in early to sound check. That wasn't anybody's experience also. You know why? Because those who sound checked had another hour of work to do before sound check, and that was every single Sunday setting up an entire sound system, running every single wire, even for a band of 7 or 2, but we set every single thing up. We had chairs, and we had light, and we had a bathroom. But in order to do church, in order to have a gathering, it meant hours of labor from everybody. And that was hard, and it took a toll.
Some of the best friends of my life have gone on to other places, but it's so core to our vision of wanting to train people up and send them out and to seek to be a blessing to the nations that it's just part of the plan. And you just read the book of Acts and look at scripture, and that sort of tension, that love-hate relationship with sending people is there as well. And so I just think about people that were so instrumental at the beginning, moving on, people like Luke Dougherty and his wife Ann, and Jeremy and Jesse Linneman, they come to mind immediately. Sending them out That was maybe one of the first and hardest times, but just how I know God is using and blessing them, and then also how God has provided and raised up other people to serve where they served. And so that aspect of it is satisfying as well. But of course, as we began to plant churches, as I came to plant a church that would, having the Worleys down in Arkansas, having Josh and Harmony down in Jefferson City, with Pap and Fleshman down in Rio, getting ready to send the Glossons and Groves to Japan. It's really exciting, and it's a blessing.
So I came to Karis in 2009. We started just checking out one of the community groups and getting familiar with the people. And I remember there was one key guy that really impacted me, and his wife impacted Harmony. But that was the Linnemans. And Jeremy Linneman was this guy that just was very patient, very kind. He just let me get to know him and get to know Karis. And that's really how Karis started for us. Over time, we got to know the Larsons, Harmony and I, and we had them over for meals. They had us over for meals. And I was thinking about going away. I was thinking about moving to Kentucky to go to school. And Kevin, in only a way that Kevin can, kind of put his arm around me and says, "Well, hey dummy, why don't you do your internship here with us?" And I thought to myself, well, why not? These guys know me, they already care about me, why not do it right here and let them be forming me and helping shape me into the kind of pastor I want to become. I was approached by the elders, and they said, we have a vision and have had one for a while to see churches planted in Moberly and in Fulton and in Jeff City. And what do you think about going there, you and Harmony, and helping start another campus? Thought, okay, well, we'll at least give Jeff City a shot. We'll give that a look, and I'm so used to a big city, coming from Los Angeles, like the idea of a small town just seemed really hard to me at first. But we started going to visit in Jeff City. Bobby Scambry and Dan Glosson went with me. We spent a night up there at a hotel and just walked around, got familiar with the town, and ate at restaurants and just hung out and started praying about it. My wife started praying about it, and we eventually decided the need is great there. Why shouldn't we go and help meet that need? And after being there now for almost just over 2 years, God has worked so much. We've seen people come to faith who literally had no relationship with God, now have a vibrant relationship with God and the church and the Word, and they're just growing. And that to me is that's exactly the whole point of why we go and plant churches. And I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the way God has used our time at Karis to strengthen our relationship, to strengthen our marriage, to strengthen our own walks with God, and then to send us to be that encouragement and that message of hope for the lost in another place, and that God's actually fulfilling His promise to bring people to Him through us. And so that's my story.
Things are really hard sometimes as a family of God. But I have been in a lot of different homes and a lot of other different kinds of families. And I don't know that it's worth it to put this much work into family other than the family of God.
I've been here since 2005, or since the first day we began worshiping in 2006. What's kept me at Karis is the family and the people that I get to serve with.
And there is no story about family that ends well in the New Testament other than the family of God. And so when you ask me why I'm still here, it's because I'm holding out for the promise that this family, however hard it may be, the story ends well.